Hello, students. This week, we're concentrating on restorative justice. So, the whole week, think about two words in our class restorative justice. I'm going to introduce it in this way. First of all, as we hand over the baton to you to grab a hold of, note that one doesn't have to be creative and think up new solutions, so on. More so, we need to roll out what is already there, what is already created, what is already works. And restorative justice 100% works. Now, restorative justice has been around for thousands of years. However, in our country, in the US, we don't necessarily want restorative justice because it takes more money. And with more money, you need more tax money. So I'm going to demonstrate that in this lecture. But I first want to give us a definition of restorative justice, a working definition. I'm one of the national trainers on restorative justice, and it is a very healthy, excellent definition that I'm going to give you. So please do write it down. So, restorative justice is a system whereby when crime is introduced to the community is stakeholders are harmed. Period. The community has to be healed or back to status quo. Sorry, the community has to be healed back to status quo or to better health. So I'll repeat. Restorative justice is a system whereby when crime is introduced to the community stakeholders are harmed. Period. The community has to be brought back to status quo or better improved health. That's restorative justice. Now, again, it's been around for thousands of years, but in the US, we don't see it rolled out because it takes more money. So, what do I mean by that? Let's go to current events that we all understand or have heard of. So, over the last year, in this our COVID era, we've heard a phrase called defund the police. Now, in actuality, the people saying that don't understand all the intricacies that are involved with that. They don't understand that actually the police need more money. So, in this case of restorative justice, the police definitely need more money. Law enforcement needs more money to be able to roll out the solution, which is restorative justice. So, restorative justice has a lot of different moving parts within it. So, refer to the video clips that I've posted within our module. Each one is imperative and important to see. Okay. The first one I must warn you is spoken by a very high up international person called Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu is the mentor of Nelson Mandela. You may have heard of Nelson Mandela. And Desmond Tutu is on the Elders Council. Look all that up. The Elders Council was founded by my uncle, Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations a number of years ago. Look all that up. So as I speak these things, do look up and research all of this. Desmond Tutu was the mentor, actually, of Nelson Mandela. Okay. Now, the first video may sound very difficult to listen to. I had to listen to it 3 times because of his accent. So I want you to know he's brilliant. His IQ is above and beyond. His accent is heavy for us American ears. We have an accent, I have an accent, you have an accent, he has an accent. However, it's heavy for us to understand. So look at it about 3 times, but also put your captions on. That will help you very much because it's imperative you get the foundation of that. Because as he will brief you, restorative justice has been around for thousands of years. And as you Google restorative justice, you'll see a lot of information on it. But in academics, you learn and study it, and as you have trainers such as I, you learn it. But a lay person doesn't know about restorative justice. They don't know the solution is there. Now, in the US, the reason why we don't have restorative justice points back to money. Money, money. Now, imagine who gives the money to help roll out restorative justice, to help the police, to help law enforcement in general. Who gives the money? We do. Public servants with taxes. So take a pause and think about that. Do you want to volunteer to have more taxes taken out of your paycheck? Well, most all students over the decades have taught this. Say, no, we need even more money. We can't take more taxes out. Well, then in the back of your mind, know that places like Canada, the United Kingdom, Sweden, they pay a lot of taxes. Close to, for example, in Canada and Sweden, close to 50% of the paycheck is taxes. And Sweden says, well, when we pay more taxes, the whole community benefits. When the whole community benefits, the whole nation is more healthy. And therefore, we actually use less money because everyone's healthier. Things work better. So research all that. So coming back to restorative justice. So look at the definition you wrote down. And I'm going to use the example of the Boston Marathon. You may have been, based on the diversity, you may have been in elementary school and the Boston Marathon had bombs go off. Look that up. And I'm going to look at the definition with you. So we look at the definition of restorative justice using, say, the Boston Marathon as an example. So look at the word community. What was the community that was affected when that crime happened? So we named the community. Community at times could be the nation. The community could be a city. The community could be a neighborhood. So we defined that. Remember, words are powerful. Every word written down is properly placed because of the power that it holds and the meaning and the definition. And look at stakeholders. Take a pause and think that you're law enforcement looking around at the Boston Marathon. Who are the stakeholders of that community? Who are the stakeholders? Participants, runners, spectators, ambulance personnel, EMS, police officers, teenagers, children, babies in strollers, mothers, dads. Those are stakeholders. So how do you bring the stakeholders in the community back to status quo or better health after crime has been committed? How do you do that? It takes money. Now, going from that, let me use the example of, say, SAPD, San Antonio Police. So people said defund the police. And with restorative justice, which is the solution, it is. You don't have to be creative, just roll it out, enact it. With restorative justice, we need more money for the police, for example, as an example, more tax money. So let's extrapolate as we look at that. So the San Antonio police said 2,000 some capped in a city of 1.4 to 1.7 million people. And remember, San Antonio is a city. We're not including other cities within Bexar County. So that's not enough police officers, but it's capped per vote per union for various reasons. Okay. The police officers vote for that. We need more police officers. We need police officers to be walking in neighborhoods, in their territory, in their hood. We need more police officers on horses, on motorbikes, to get out of the cars, to get to know community members, community stakeholders, to chat and talk with you. Hey, how you doing? How's your mama? How's everything going? How's high school going? To get to know you by name. We need more money to put up basketball courts so police can play basketball with the teenagers, with the young people, with anyone. Get to know them. Once police officers get to know people, even get to know their names, it's helpful in so many ways I won't go into. So do you see how in the US we're reluctant to roll out restorative justice? Now, what you wrote down in the word restorative justice as a system has many parts, many moving parts to it. So, for example, community policing falls under restorative justice and it has many parts to it. Let's go to the high schools. Think back. Does your high school have a peer mediation review council? Some of them used to. That takes money as well. Training, certification. So stop and think about that. Say there's a teenager or a child who's going to be expelled or who's in trouble. The peers know them. And in this case, you know the phrase, snitches get stitches and end up in ditches? In this case, no. Snitches don't get stitches and don't end up in ditches. In this case, of peer review mediation, peers help because peers know the student. Peers know more than the teachers. So peers get together and help, and maybe the child then or the teenager will not be expelled. Maybe help will be gotten for them. Maybe they'll feel part of a community of their peers. That's one example, falling under restorative justice. Another example, which my colleagues nationally like to use a lot, is that of, say, the talking stick. So teachers are trained from elementary all the way to 12th grade on having their students from time to time based on organization schedule in a circle. And the person who gets, say, the stick, the baton or the stick, is the one that gets to speak in the circle. The others have to listen and learn active listening skills. However, if someone doesn't feel like speaking that day, it's no problem of skipping, giving the stick to someone else. That person could maybe have double time based on the rules of the circle, and so on and so forth. That is part and element of the system restorative justice. Let's go to the word system. So you've heard a lot on alternative media, on mainstream media this past year, the word system. So let's take, for example, an easy example within our field of study, the system of government, the system of politics. So we have the executive, the president, we have the judicial, Supreme Court, we have the legislative, which is Congress. Then we add the other elements too, such as the military, CDC, which is Center of Disease Control, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, Education Department, Justice Department, law enforcement departments under Homeland Security, and so on and so forth, all within a system. So let's go back to what you wrote down. Restorative justice is a system whereby when crime has been committed, all community stakeholders, the community, all community stakeholders, the community, are harmed, period. The community has to be brought back to status quo or improved, better health. I know I may have tweaked some words, but that's the best definition as my brain is warmed up. Okay? It's a definition I've used for many years. So today and this week, you're learning as you review each and every video clip that I've posted that academics is fantastic. You study, you learn what is. You get the words and the language and understand, and you take your time. And you know what needs to be done is enactment of these. Roll it out. One doesn't have to be creative. One doesn't have to think up new things. We already have so much at our disposal, which are not enacted for various reasons, which are not rolled out. So anyway, do the homework, study all the words I used, look at the movie within the next year, you don't have to do it this week, called Hotel Rwanda. Hotel Rwanda. It's a great example of what Nelson Mandela, not Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, apologies, Desmond Tutu, the mentor of Nelson Mandela, helped with Rwanda recover from the genocide that took place. And genocide takes place too often in this world of ours. Now in 2021, it's taking place in Ethiopia and other places. Mumar. Genocide could happen in a hypothetical such as one group of people, ethnically defined in San Antonio, commits homicide, kills another group of people defined by ethnicity. That's not going to happen. But that's the example. What do you do with that later? So Hotel Rwanda shows what happens. Horrific. I was involved in supporting recovery in a small way back in 1994. Very small way. My uncle was the head of the United Nations at the time, Secretary General Kofi Annan. Look up those names. He created the Elder Council, which Desmond Tutu was a part of. Look that up. The person featured as the hero in the movie Hotel Rwanda, I met him here in San Antonio. He and his wife. They live here. So when you have time the next year, look up that movie. It'll teach you a lot about genocide. It's terrible. It's an entertaining movie, but it's horrific. So inhumane. And Desmond Tutu was the person who was able to bring in restorative justice, which has been around, as he explains, for thousands of years. Imagine when a whole community defined as a country does genocide. How can you put all the murderers into jail? Do you have enough space, enough money to put them all in a correctional institute where you have to feed them? No. So what happens? So the country was at odds what to do. So it took about 3 years of restorative justice where the perpetrators, the criminals, one by one, had to speak to community. And the community spoke back to them. You can imagine. Horrific. And then they had to do community service and so on. So you can imagine, in a brief way of what I'm briefing you, very briefly, what kind of details would go into restorative justice with that. So there are different aspects of restorative justice. The perpetrators, criminals do go to correctional institutes. They do get justice for their crime. So don't focus on just the perpetrator or just the crime. Focuses on all community stakeholders, including the harmed, the victims, the community. So it's very involved. So this is a week where you realize that it's fantastic. You're in college, you're learning. You learn to take your time. You're learning to appreciate the power of each word. You learn that each word has a book written behind it. So you're taking your time to read, to process, to understand. As your neurotransmitters and neural pathways here are formed with knowledge. So you become the person with a skill set to support the community to be healthier. Thank you all. Do the homework.